My name is Peter Slavovsky, a friend of David Vargo, and David had asked me to share my testimony. I can remember when I was 10 years old, my mother had felt strongly that I and my two sisters should attend a small local church that was located right around the corner from our house, principally to pick up some morals for our lives. No exacting content or spiritual significance other than just to learn a little bit about morality. And at that age, at age 10, going to this small church, I had noticed a bulletin posted on the side wall indicating that this evangelist from the United States would be coming to visit the city that I was born in and partially grew up in, Sao Paulo, Brazil. And his name was Billy Graham. And I was so impressed by the way this bulletin read that I told my mother. And next thing you knew, she and I attended the crusade that was held in Brazil's largest stadium, football or soccer as we call it here, stadium. And we arrived a little bit late, I remember. And when we arrived, the entire stadium was already thoroughly packed. And we were stuck in a crowd outside of the stadium. Well, I would not be waiting outside in my determination to see this Billy Graham. So I just grabbed my mother's hand, I remember, and pulled her along, pushing people aside all the way to the main entry of the stadium. And we got in, and all we could see was a stage that was set way far away and way below the level that we entered at. And this man speaking in English, but with a translator. Well, I mean, that was the extent of that moment. It was just something that made a big impression in me, that he was talking about God and the significance of having God in your life. And but it wasn't until 9 years later, I'm a sophomore in college, that I found myself confused about life, asking a lot of questions about my existence, my identity, and actually going into a short period of depression. And during this time, my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife eventually, invited me to go to a Campus Crusade for Christ meeting at our campus in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I wasn't totally keen on doing it, but because she was my girlfriend at the time, in a blossoming relationship, I went. And the speaker that evening, after I heard beautiful songs and beautiful worship by other students, which was something new to me, the speaker spoke on the topic of Holy Spirit. And I knew nothing about the Holy Spirit. I knew less about salvation and that Jesus had died for me to forgive my sins, to be my substitute on the cross. Well, this speaker and I got together the next day, at which time at lunch he shared the 4 spiritual laws with me, a little crusade booklet explaining the path to salvation. And he handed me a Gospel of John and said, "Peter, take this booklet with you. When you find a moment of time by yourself, read the entire booklet in one sitting. But before you read it, before you open the front cover, say a prayer like this: God, if you're real, please reveal yourself to me in these pages of the Gospel of John. And I did that. A couple of days later, I opened the Gospel of John and I started reading after I prayed. And about 2/3 of the way through, in my depressed state, and just looking for something positive for my life, I was confronted by the Holy Spirit. And can't remember exactly what verse struck me, but it might have been John 14:6. I'm the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. And that moment was so poignant to me that suddenly I gained a certain understanding that I didn't have before. And I felt this depression that had put a weight on my shoulders, totally lifted up. And I started laughing, not out of disrespect for God, but out of joy. And I couldn't stop laughing. And then I proceeded to read the entirety of the book, the rest of the book of John. And from that moment on, I picked up the Bible, certainly starting with the Gospel of John, and read much of the Bible, started reading it fervently and with just an open heart to see what God would tell me about my life.